Now, last year, I reviewed one of the more popular convertible laptops on the channel. It was the HP Envy x360. And what it brought to the table was a good price to performance ratio. Good display, good battery life, good performance in an all metal design. And best of all, it doesn't break the bank. It came in at a very good price. Well, I couldn't wait to see what HP had in store for its refresh here for 2022. I took delivery of it, I did a live unboxing of it, and I'm really impressed with it. Now, one of the key differences this time around is you can now get this with an OLED option, a full HD OLED display. It's still 15.6 inches, but having an OLED on this at this price point is a big boon for a lot of people. Now, I have the full HD IPS model. We'll see how that does. It has excellent battery life, and once again, it doesn't disappoint in that category. Improved performance with an all-new processor. We'll talk about that. And it has an all-metal design. We'll see if this all, once again, makes this one of the best mid-tier, valuable in terms of price to performance ratio convertibles here for 2022. Stay tuned, we're gonna find out now. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my review of the HP Envy x360, all new for 2022. Coming up.
Now, before we get to the unboxing, I want to let everyone know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by HP. I'm not being sponsored by HP. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. HP is not getting copy approval. That means they're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. Now, this unit is on loan from HP, and once this review is done, I'll be sending it back. Pricing for the X360 2-in-1 starts at $639.99 over at HP's website. That to me is a steal considering the upgrade you're getting this year over last year's model. Fully loaded with the new OLED option, you're looking at $1,049.99, and price here as configured with my review unit, $899 over at Best Buy. I will leave a link in the description below for more information and where you can buy it. And I think when you look at the price to performance ratio here, this to me is a steal. I would not hesitate on this. I would jump on it. This is an excellent 2-in-1 convertible, especially for the price. And with the specs and pricing out of the way, let's find out what you get inside the box. Let's open it up. It's the Nightfall Black. I think you could also get this in silver, but I don't know if that's only for the Intel version. I'm not sure. And it feels a little bit of heft on this. Again, 15.6-inch display. All right, let's see what some warranty information, some product information. That's pretty typical. So we've got our power charger. It's USB-C. 65 watts from HP, of course. And I don't see the pen, so we'll have to bring our own pen, I guess. And of course, we get the unit here. Let's get it out of the plastic. And there she is. And that's, of course, the Nightfall Black, and she is pretty. So you can see there's a vent on the bottom there. Sort of, yeah, you can see the fans there actually coming through. A little bit of a fingerprint magnet you can see already. Let's take a look at the back of it first, and then we'll get to the ports. There's some Envy branding here. You can see the color here. It's beautiful. Again, you're gonna have to keep it clean. Boxy look, I guess. You know, the linear edges and so forth. Now, when it comes to the fit and finish of it, I would say it's pretty good, although I noticed a little flex in the chassis and on the keyboard deck, but not much. But again, at this price point, I'm not surprised. But for the most part, this all-metal design really holds up. And one of the things I'm seeing a big improvement is less screen wobble than you got last year. So when you're typing, you don't have a lot of movement on the screen. And that was a big complaint last year, and I'm glad they remedied that in this version. Okay, let's check out the port selection. On the left side is a USB-A port. Next to that is a 3.5mm microphone headphone combo jack. And I love to see this, a full-size SD card reader. And the cards sit flush with the unit. They click right in there, and I love that. Now, on the right side are two USB-C ports that are full function, supporting data, charge, and display out. Now, no longer do you need a barrel pin connection to charge this laptop, as this does support USB-C charging. Hence, they give you a USB-C adapter this time around. Now, unfortunately, these are not USB-C 4 ports, which would give you a lot of the functionality you'd get from a Thunderbolt port, and I was not able to get it to work with my Thunderbolt drive that I use for SSD storage. That didn't work on this, so it's not USB-C 4. You can put it into the tent mode, and then, of course, presentation mode, and then, of course, tablet mode. And again, it's a little heavy for a tablet, but you can do all the things you need to do. Now, there are 4 total options when it comes to the display, and it'll depend on whether or not you got the Intel version of this laptop or the AMD. If you go with the AMD, there are 2 options. I have the IPS version with the 250-nit display, and there's also a new OLED option that's also full HD, 1920 by 1080. That's the first time they're offering an OLED version on this panel in terms of an AMD laptop. Now, if you go with the Intel version of this laptop, then you can go with the IPS. That can get as bright as 400 nits, and then there's a brand new Quad HD version that's 2560 by 1440 that also has a high refresh rate, 120 hertz, and that can get as bright as 300 nits. Again, Intel only. Now, HP sent over the IPS version that can get as bright as 250 nits. Now, that's not what I was really hoping for here. I was hoping to go above 400 nits even. But of course, if you go with the OLED option, which I highly encourage you to do so, that will get as bright as 400 nits. But this one is rated at 250 nits in terms of the brightness. I actually measured 260, again, below my 300 nit threshold. Now, one thing you need to be aware of, this is a very glossy display. You will notice that glare and reflections depending on your lighting conditions. But I think the OLED version is going to have less of an issue because that will get as bright as 400 nits as opposed to the 260 nits I measured in this IPS model. Having that higher brightness will reduce the amount of glare and reflections they have to contend with, but it won't totally eliminate it. So just keep that in mind. And in everyday use for the past week or so that I've had this has been actually pretty good. Now, this retains a 16:9 aspect ratio. So what does that mean? You won't get the black bars on the top and the bottom as you would with a 3:2 aspect ratio or even a 16:10. So retaining that 16:9 on a 15.6 inch device, I don't mind that. And you also get 88% screen to body ratio. That means you're going to get those really small bezels. So you don't have to contend with the black bars and you get the small bezels. I'll take it. Now, as far as watching Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, it's been great on this. Again, that is a glossy display. You'll have to keep that in mind. But for the most part, it's worked out pretty well. And of course, the OLED will be even more enhanced in terms of the really deep blacks, the vibrant colors, the really high contrast that you get with an OLED display. So for those, spend the extra money. I think it's a $90 premium, and that to me is well worth it. Although it won't do quite as well in terms of the battery life. We'll get into that in a little bit. Now, if you're a content creator, I would stay away from this IPS panel, judging by these numbers that I was able to measure on here, especially the color gamut not being very good in terms of coverage. That's 61% sRGB, 46% Adobe RGB, 45% of the DCI-P3 wide color gamut, and 44% NTSC. I would go with the OLED model. You'll do much better in terms of that coverage. You'll do better in the color accuracy. I'm pretty sure of that. This has a pretty high Delta E score, 3.03, meaning it's not the most color accurate out there. We like to see it below 2. So if you do any type of content creation, go with the OLED. It'll do better in terms of that coverage of the color gamut. It'll be more color accurate, and it'll be better for Photoshop, Lightroom, video editing, and of course, color grading. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a multi-touch display. Not only can you use your fingers, but it also can use the pen. Now, HP didn't send over the pen with this review unit, but I was able to use the HP pen sent over with the Spectre x360 13.5 inch, and it worked perfectly for taking notes, sketching out diagrams, or artwork. It'll be great for the note taker or the digital artist. And the pen sticks magnetically to the side, so you won't lose it. Now, to charge it, it does use USB-C for those wondering. And this being a 2-in-1 convertible means you could put it into the different modes. You've got the tent mode, which is great for recipes in the kitchen, watching movies. Netflix, Amazon, YouTube has been great in that mode. The same could be said for the stand, or what I like to call the presentation mode. And of course, you could put it into the tablet mode, great for use with the pen.
So big improvement when it comes to the camera over last year's version, of course. They now have gone to their 5 megapixel camera, and I think HP's done an outstanding job in 2022 with their cameras. This is no exception. They've gone with this 5 megapixel, as I mentioned, capable, and what you're seeing here is 1440p video. What do you think about the video quality? What do you think about the audio? Another big improvement is the fact that this is now an IR camera, allowing you to log in with face recognition with Windows Hello. The setup was easy and it's worked well, so that's been pretty good. But one thing to note, they took away the fingerprint scanner that we found in last year's model, no longer on the keyboard. You now can only log in with face recognition in terms of that Windows Hello, or use your passcode or password. Now, as far as their shutter switch, it's still here. It's the key actually on the keyboard that allows you to turn off the webcam for more security and privacy. We like to see that. It's got all the presence detection features. It has the auto framing, the backlighting, all the auto backlight, so it makes sure you're always not only in frame, but it also has the best lighting condition to be presented to the viewer. So I think this is a really big improvement here in 2022 over last year's model, and I'm glad to see it here on this Envy line, especially for this price. What you get for the price here is pretty amazing. But I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below.
Now, good news when it comes to getting inside this laptop. No longer are there any screws underneath the rubber strips. You don't have to remove them. All you need to do is just remove the screws that are visible outside of the unit, of course, and pop off the bottom plate with either a guitar pick or a pry tool, and you're in. And the better news is exactly what's upgradable on this. Not only is the SSD upgradable, the Wi-Fi card is upgradable, but the RAM is upgradable. So the trifecta is here as far as upgradability. We like to see that. Now, this review unit sent over by HP has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it's the DDR4 3200 RAM we saw last year. So we're not getting a bump up in terms of the DDR5 we've been seeing here in 2022. A little bit of a negative. But the fact of the matter is you could put it in yourself, and you can go beyond the 16 gigabytes, which you can configure at HP's website. You can actually put, I would say, two 16 gigabyte sticks in here for 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it'll be running, of course, in dual channel mode. And this review unit has 512 gigabytes of SSD storage. The good news is it's slotted in. Now, judging by these reads and writes, these are Gen 3 equivalent speeds, not the faster Gen 4 we'd like to see here in 2022. The good news is you could change it out yourself and put in a faster drive. Now, when it comes to the Wi-Fi, this has the MediaTek Wi-Fi 6E along with Bluetooth 5.2. It's a combo card, and as I mentioned, it's slotted in, upgradable by the user. So if you want to change it out, you have that option. That's always good. And as far as the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth working on this unit so far, no issues on either front, both working as expected. Okay, let's talk about the keyboard, and I'm a big fan of the keyboard when it comes to the tactility, the key travel, very comfortable. Your fingers never feel like you're going to bottom out, comfortable for typing long emails, comfortable for typing long documents, so it's been really good in that regard. Now, they did away with the numpad, so those number crunchers who do Excel spreadsheets are going to be a little bit disappointed, but they did away with that last year, so that's a carryover to this year. So for those that want it, you don't get it. Now, as far as the multi-stage backlight that this has, the keys light up white, and it's easy to differentiate to see the contrast between the keys and the white backlight. So that worked out well, allowing you to get work done in a dark room or a dimly lit environment. That's good. And it has a nice persistent touchpad. It has a Mylar finish. It's a smooth finish, and it allows for smooth scrolling. It's pretty responsive. And when it comes to the gestures, everything works as you'd expect. Good job on the touchpad, and it's a nicely sized touchpad at that. Okay, let's get into the performance, and we're seeing a nice year-over-year performance increase here. Not a huge increase, but a nice increase nonetheless. This is running the brand new Ryzen 7 5825U. That's an 8-core, 16-thread processor, of course, from AMD in their Ryzen series. And as you can see, a higher PC Mark 10 score, higher single-core, multi-core score across the board in both the Geekbench 5 and the Cinebench R23 tests, showing that this is a very good performer for everyday tasks such as Microsoft Office, email, web browsing. You could do 1080p video editing. It's got the integrated Radeon graphics. It's not going to blow you away in terms of the graphics performance, but you can do some video editing and some 3D rendering. I wouldn't do 4K video editing on this. You'd want to look for something with a discrete GPU. And when it comes to gaming, I think it goes without saying this is not a dedicated gaming laptop. There are better options out there with discrete GPUs. This has the integrated Radeon graphics, but if you lower some of the settings, you can get somewhat playable frame rates on some of the more popular titles. Again, this is good for the occasional game here and there, but as your main gaming laptop, I would look at other options. And one of the reasons we're seeing pretty good performance on this is because I'm seeing little thermal throttling. When I ran the Prime 95 stress test to see if this will power throttle under heavy load, I noticed that it would get a little bit high in terms of the temperatures, but never getting overly hot and never reducing the clock speeds to the point where performance is compromised. It's actually had pretty good clock speeds throughout. Now, when it comes to the fan noise, the fans will kick in under heavy load, getting about 45 or 46 decibels at the loudest when you're under that performance mode. But under the regular mode, you're pretty much quiet all around. That's been pretty good. Now, when it comes to the surface temperatures, relatively cool throughout in terms of the surface temperatures. There is a few hot spots, the one above the keyboard below the display, and then there's one on the underside as you see here. But for the most part, remained relatively cool. Okay, let's talk about the battery life. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a 51 watt hour battery. And before you jump to conclusions saying that's too small, the battery life on this has been excellent, scoring over 14 hours on my continuous web surfing test over Wi-Fi at 150 nits. You're looking at anywhere between 11 to 12 hours in real world mixed usage. And that is excellent here for 2022. Very efficient chipset, excellent battery life. So for those road warriors that need longevity in terms of that battery life, this will not disappoint you. Now, the included 65 watt USB-C power adapter takes about an hour and 40 minutes to charge this laptop to full. Not too bad in terms of charging. All right, let's talk about the audio. And when it comes to the audio, there are two bottom-facing speakers, as you can see here. And I thought the volume could be a little bit louder, but I thought it was decent, and the mids were decent, and there was a hint of bass. Not the best audio I've heard, but again, at this price point, I'm not expecting outstanding MacBook Pro quality audio. But for the most part, for a convertible, it's okay. Let's give it a listen with Epidemic Sound. If you want to save 10% off Epidemic Sound, see the link in the description below. Now let's give this a listen. All right, folks, let's bring it all home. What do I think about the HP Envy x360 here for 2022? And I gotta say, on some levels, a lot of big improvements, especially the CPU performance year over year. Nice increase there. I like the fact that they're now offering this with a OLED display. That's something we didn't get last year, especially with this AMD Ryzen model. That is going to be a welcome addition because I think you need to stay away from this full HD IPS display, which barely hit 260 nits on my measurements. Definitely not bright enough, and it's a highly glossy display, which compounds the issue. So if you're going to get this, I would go with the OLED. But there is a silver lining to this full HD IPS display, and that would be that amazing battery life, getting over 14 hours on my continuous web surfing test over Wi-Fi at 150 nits. In real-world mixed usage, you're looking at 11 to 12 hours at a minimum on this device, which is excellent here for 2022. The thermals are excellent on this as well. The port selection's excellent, although I would have liked to have seen USB 4 on this. Instead, you get USB 3.2. But for the most part, I like the fact that you're getting that full-size SD card reader and the cards sit flush with the unit. So good job on the ports. And we're getting a much improved webcam this time around, going with that 5 megapixel camera capable of 1440p video. And that's going to be great for your video conferencing, a big improvement over last year. Now, if you're going to buy this, get the OLED option. It's only $90 more, and I think for that price, you're getting a lot for the money. I'm going to give this a score of 87%, making the HP Envy x360 here for 2022 definitely worth your money.
So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew from AMD Tech. See ya.